And I made very clear in my remarks this morning that, speaking for the United States, there will be no more delays. We think the Somali people have waited long enough. And there is every reason to believe that given the right political environment, the Somalis, people of all parts of Somalia, can govern themselves very well. They do a lot of that today on their own with no help from a government in Mogadishu or any outside help. So we have no doubt that structured properly, the right kind of constitution, the right set of elections, the right people being elected, will put Somalia on a much more secure path forward. We also believe in a unified Somalia. Now, how Somalis themselves determine what that means is up to you. You know, our country has 50 states. We are a federal system. So that may be something that you would look at, or take another example of a state that is you know, arranged differently, but takes into account the legitimate constituencies that exist throughout the country. What was so important about this conference, and why we are grateful to the government of the UK, is that it comes at the halfway point. The roadmap is 6 months in, 6 months to go. Now, regarding your last question, I think that the AMISOM forces, the TFG forces, the Ethiopian forces, others, the Kenyans who will be integrated into the AMISOM forces, are doing a very good job. We see a lot of progress on the ground. I am not a military strategist, but I think I know enough to say airstrikes would not be a good idea. And we have absolutely no reason to believe anyone, certainly not the United States, anyone is considering that. The progress that is being made on the ground by the forces who are trying to free Somalia from the grip of al-Shabaab has to continue. But it is, I think, encouraging to see how much has been accomplished.
Next one, Wyatt Andrews, CBS News.
Madam Secretary, going back to the humanitarian aid, this is a long time coming. I mean, what makes you or the members of this alliance believe that Assad will simply allow in the humanitarian aid where he hasn't done so before? And following up on the previous question, is there a plan if he simply refuses to allow the aid in? Well, secondly, if I might, do I understand you correctly on the SNC? Does the United States now consider the Syrian National Council to be a credible alternative to Assad? Because that sounds new. Well, they will be at the conference tomorrow. They will have a seat at the table as a representative of the Syrian people. And we think it's important to have Syrians represented. And the consensus opinion by the Arab League and all the others who are working and planning this conference is that the SNC is a credible representative, and therefore they will be present. It's also true, Wyatt, that I cannot, standing here today, predict exactly how this will unfold. But we are seeing increasing defections. We are seeing a lot of pressure on the inner regime. There is growing evidence that some of the officials in the Syrian government are beginning to hedge their bets, you know, moving assets, moving family members, looking for a possible exit strategy. We see a lot of developments that we think are pointing to pressure on Assad. We hope it will pressure him to make the right decision regarding humanitarian assistance. But in the event that he continues to refuse, we think that the pressure will continue to build. So it's a fluid situation. But if I were a betting person for the medium term and certainly the long term, I would be betting against Assad.
Last one today, Glenn Ogleza, Sky News.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to pick up on the airstrikes in Somalia, first of all, because About an hour or so ago in this room, the Prime Minister of Somalia said that he would welcome airstrikes against al-Shabaab. So I just wondered if the Americans would condone that or possibly even participate in it.
You know, I wasn't here to hear what the Prime Minister said, but I have no military rationale for airstrikes in this kind of conflict. If there is some argument to be made, I would certainly be interested in it, but I don't know who would do it.
On Syria, isn't the reality that Assad is intent on annihilating the opposition as his father did before him, and without the Russians and the Chinese, and short of military intervention, there's frankly nothing anyone can do about it. And I wonder if I could ask you about Christopher Tappin, who's a 65-year-old British man who's being extradited to the States tomorrow. He's accused of supplying missile parts to the Iranians. He says he's innocent and that he should be tried in British courts, not extradited to the United States. Thank you.
Well, as to the last question, we have an extradition treaty, as you know, between us, and there are certain laws and procedures to be followed. They have been followed in this case. The gravamen of the complaint is based in U.S. law, and that's where he will be tried. Regarding Syria, I think the fact is that when Assad's father conducted his horrific attacks back in the early 80s, there was no internet, there was no Twitter, there were no social communication sites, there was no satellite television, there were no on-the-ground witnesses. It's much harder, and thankfully so, to have that level of brutality, shelling with artillery your own people, not be known by everyone, most particularly your own people. Not after the fact, but in real time. Therefore, I think that the strategy followed by the Syrians and their allies is one that can't stand the test of legitimacy or even brutality for any length of time. There will be increasingly capable opposition forces. They will, from somewhere, somehow, find the means to defend themselves as well as begin offensive measures. And the pressure will build on countries like Russia and China. Because world opinion is not going to stand idly by. Arab opinion is not going to be satisfied. Watching two nations, one for commercial reasons, one for commercial and ideological reasons, bolster a regime that is, defying every rule of, modern international norms. So I know it's not a satisfying answer to say we have to take this day by day, but that's my answer. We have to take this day by day. But it is clear to me that there will be a breaking point. I wish it would be sooner so that more lives would be saved than later, but I have absolutely no doubt there will be such a breaking point. And I want the Syrian people who are suffering so mightily to know that the international community has not underestimated either their suffering or their impatience, and we are moving in an expeditious but deliberate manner. And I also want those Syrians who are still uncertain about what would come after Assad, and there are so many of them, with understandable reasons, who fear what would happen to them because of who they are, or how they worship, or what their political beliefs are. I want them to understand that we also appreciate their concerns and fears, but we think that there's no doubt in our mind that a political transition that respects the rights of every Syrian and puts in place a democratic process will be by far the best outcome for them and their children. So, thank you.
Thank you all very much.